Morty. We've got to turn the project in early.
Where's the sound effect behind here? Hey, Blake Haven. I clicked that like yesterday. Wait, is it gonna now? It's gonna reset. Hey, Angel, good to see you. Oh my gosh, there we go. Now it does the effect. Watch it not unfreeze me. Oh, it did unfreeze me. Good to see everyone here. Had some meetings afterwards. We were talking about some 474 big projects for all the classes. Sorry about that. I saw probably slept in. Was Mewbot actually in the chat? Was Mewbot here and I wasn't? How did Mewbot tell people points beforehand? A random poll, 700 working men. Yeah, let's do it here. Let's do it. Let's jump into this. Get some problems working on right here. A random poll. I just copy pasted. Oh, you copy pasted it? Oh, you did. Is it normal for my dependent box plots don't have any outliers? It could be. Yep, your box plots might not have any outliers. Very possible. You actually tricked me right there with that. I'm resending Mewbot right now as we speak. I had a bunch of meetings after class, meeting with some students. So sorry about that. Busy end of the semester. My gosh. Let's knock out some of my Pearson chapter 16. Get some of the work done. Thank you so much, everybody. Sorry. End of the semester. Busy. You should have seen it. I didn't shave for like all Easter break, and my beard was getting like fuzzy beard. So it is busy time. Thank you, everyone, for all your hard work. A lot of people turned in the project last night. Oh, thank you, Tara. I appreciate that. A lot of people turned in the project. Thank you if you turned in the project. If you didn't, we got a lot of videos. Are you still able to look at a project where we just submit them? Yeah. I've got some people emailed last night late. I emailed everyone back till like 8 or 9 p.m. at night, and then didn't get everyone else emailed. There were some late ones emailed to me. Didn't get to do those, and I do have some emails today. I'm up to 37 emails. Was emailing between this. Who is Mac and Cheesy? I don't see. Evan is now Mac and Cheesy. I don't see any Mac and Cheesy here. We're getting the no, I refuse. Then he is not. Lindsay, good to see you here. If you have questions, drop them in the chat. We're going to start off here with some My Pearson, the chapter 16 quiz. The chapter 16 quiz. Okay. Take a look right here. Can you do the question, a company survey? Yeah, we did that one yesterday, but we can do it again here. You got it, Tara. I'm putting that in the list. A random poll is the first question. The first question is a random poll of a certain amount of workers. I'm getting it pulled up right here as we speak. Oh, Mewbot, I know I clicked your button. I'm sorry, Mewbot. You need to go away again. Because I was on the wrong screen. Mewbot, go away. And my chill music. Random poll. Random poll. Here we are. Let's check it out. Have to go. No worries. Oh, no. It's the only other question we have. It's the only other question, Tara. So it's a good question because we only have 2 questions right now. And then we have in a poll, the presidential approval ratings. I'll put that right here, Lindsay, for the next one. Thank you so much, Mara. Drop these questions that you got. We'll do them in order. So we got that one next after the company. So here we are with the first question. Let me take the timestamp on it. The timestamp is 4/23, Stat 201, Chapter 16 quiz. Okay, let's jump into it. We got our coffee. Let's go. Okay, can you still do YouTube links? Yeah, Jalen, let me find those here in a second. You got it. Or after this, we'll do that. It's in the Monday video, I think. Monday video has all those links. So if you see the Monday video, check it out. I'll send you that right after we do this question. Here we go. A random poll of 900. So what are we going to do to start on this? What is the first thing you would do on a problem like this when you get a problem like this? First thing you are going to do is what? You see a problem like this, you are immediately going to start doing what? Notation.
Notation, brother.
So what is our notation? This is a poll of 900. Know that notation. Found that 8% make a 95% confidence interval. Boom. Sample size. What else do we have? What else do we have? Great job, Tara, Lindsay, and Blake. Practice makes perfect right here. P hat, great job, Tara. Once you find P hat, you instantaneously find what? If you find, yep, Lindsay, great work. And Q hat. There we go. And last but not least, this is going to tell us our what? That's going to tell us our what? Our z-score, exactly. And the z-score is 1.96. If you don't know that, we would go to the David M. Lane. Mac and cheesy was me. Oh, you were? Oh, that's too funny, Hannah. That's cool right there. I love some mac and cheese. Mac and cheese sounds like a... what is it, that show? Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends reference. Sounds like a reference from Blue and Cheese and Mac and Cheese. Good show, Foster's Home. Good cartoon. There we go. There's the 1.96. Square root. Oh, nice job. Well, Lindsay, I'm sure other people are working this too. And if you see your mistake, that's awesome. We're just going to plug in our numbers right here to solve out the confidence interval, and great work. So here we are with the p hat is 0.08 times 0.92 over square root 900. That is the standard error right there. The z-score is 1.96, found from the David M. Lane. Plus or minus, so everything across there is the margin of error. Remember, margin of error is everything after the plus or minus. The center of the interval is the best estimate, which is what we believe the truth might be, our best guess of the truth. And we're trying to figure out from p hat, which is 8%. So let's go ahead and start solving this right here. And we go 0.08 times 0.92 divided by 900 square root. That's often what I forget to do too. Times 1.96. That is now the margin of error. So are they going to ask as a percent? It is not as a percent. So this is the margin of error, and 8% is the center. So my answer should be what? So follow along right here. My answer should be 0.08 what? My answer should be 0.08 what? 0.08 what? My answer should be 0.08 what? So there's the answer right there. And so what should it be? 0.08 plus or minus? Exactly. So Lindsay's got right there is what I got. Yeah, so exactly. And thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay's literally solved it. It's going to round up maybe 0.08 plus this. So it rounds to 0.99. And then 0.08 minus this. So 0. And there's the answers because it's 0.08 plus or minus the margin of error. So you should get answers very similar to that. Check the rounding. Yeah, so, and if you're off by, I'll probably, and it says 3 decimals, so 0.061, 0.099. What does the confidence interval say about the pundit's hypothesis? So the pundit believes 5% is true. And this is a lot like the project. Because what do you notice about 5% and this interval? This interval, what's to 5%? This is a really good question that's just like the project. So what do you notice about this interval and 5%? What would you say? Don't even read what they wrote down here. Just look at the interval and look at 5%. What would you say about this interval right here and 5%? You'd be like, you know, the interval down here of the truth, I think the true proportion of men who have a second job to pay bills, 5% is not in the interval. So because 5% is not in the interval, we have evidence, strong evidence that more than 5%. So that should be right there. Good stuff. I get a little afraid every time. So it's not within the interval. We would say we don't believe that 5% is the truth. The interval suggests that more than 5%, because the interval is completely above 5%, we would have evidence that the truth is not 5%. We could reject 5% at the 0.05 alpha level. 0.05 alpha level because we are using a 95% confidence interval. If you've done the project, is this a lot like the proportions question on the project? If you've done the project, is that like, oh, that's kind of just like the proportions question on the project? Like, oh, yeah, that's what we did. We made a confidence roll, then we had a hypothesized value from somebody. I think so. It's kind of a blur. Can we do the statistics professor problem? Yeah, of course, Kayla. Good to see you. And you might be on a separate account, Kayla. How does it start? Give me the very start of the question. We have 2 questions before that. And we're going to go to the main screen right here. And so let me play the chill music. Let me find Jalen that video. We're going to find the video. We got like 10 people watching live. We love that. And the office hours from Monday has all the links. Wow, we already got 1,000 views on Monday's videos. Thank you to everyone who uses these videos. Okay, so Jalen, Project Help, your best student. Good to see her, Shaq. Project Help right here. There's where the Project Help is best located. In the Monday video, it has all the Project Help morning. And wrong again. It's all right. And so let's go here. Office hours super helpful. Thank you, Lindsay, right there. That's our goal. I try to, and thank you for everyone who follows along and answers the questions. I sometimes just kind of progress the question because I know people use this in the future. So I'm like, okay, someone's watching this in the future and being like, oh, what's the answer? Come on, like, explain this to me. So I teach to the students here, and then I teach to the ones watching in the future. I have dual goals, 2 goals, help you and help future students. Let's go do the next problem. Oh, we got tons of points drops. If the percentage went to controversial, do you reject the null? If it's isn't within, you would reject it. Great job, Isabel, right there. If the value is outside the interval, we would reject that value as a true value. And let's see if this question covers it. Good questions. So a company surveyed this many people. What are we going to do immediately on these questions? What are we going to do before we even start it? What are we doing right here? You know it. You love it.
Notation, brother.
What are we doing? Every question we get boils down to usually knowing this. We got to know our notation. Help me out with the notation. Once again, if you're watching this in the future, know your notation, know how to read the problem. This one is slightly different notation from the last one. So let's identify that notation and see what we got going on right here. What do we got going on? Oh, great job. Tara's already started us off strong right here. We got to throw some crazy points for that. And Lindsay, the tag team duo, Evan and Blake, they're getting surpassed by the Tara-Lindsay tag team duo. Lindsay is jumping off the high bar right there with all the information. Lindsay says that we have the amount sampled right here with the sample size, and we have the amount of successes right there. And if we take the amount of successes over the amount of sample, we can get p hat. Amazing work, Lindsay. And once we find p hat, we always find what? Once we find p hat, we always find what? Once we find the sample proportion, which is the proportion in the sample, we find q hat. So that's just the way it goes. It's just the way it is. Oh, 49%. So that makes life nice and easy because p hat and q hat are complements. I'm answering more questions because everyone is just... Blake, you said some mega points today. Let's go crazy. Go crazy right there. Where's Wes? We need Wes here too. Thank you so much. Lindsay is automatically showing all the mathematics right here and showing how to do each step that we now find the complement of p hat, which is q hat. Amazing work right there. Showing how to do it and how to practice this and to know what the notation is. We have one last bit of notation right here, which we might have to use an applet to help us solve, but I've done a ton of these problems, so I know this. So who wants to drop it in the chat right here for us? It's going to say that, but the next digit. I think it says 7 on the applet, which I absolutely hate. The applet, I think, throws in a 7. It shouldn't. It should be. I click the speedrun timer. Let me close out the speedrun timer. It should be p norm. No, it's q norm. I always get p and q confused. 2.3263. So it is 2.3263 for 98% confidence. And where would we go to check this? So it is 2.3263. And where would we go to check this? I wouldn't use R to check this unless you really want. Where should we go to get the z-score for a 98% confidence interval? So help me out. Remember to go for this. A lot of people get stuck on that portion right there. A lot of people are going to get stuck on that. To be like, wait, how do I know what the z-score is for a 98% confidence interval? Are we supposed to memorize these? No, you're not supposed to memorize them. So let's see. Let's take a look, Blake. Let's see. Double check. I'm about as certain can be on this. I will throw you 1,000,000 points if I'm wrong, Blake. I'm going to throw you 10,000 points for just questioning me. I like that. We'll give it to you on the test, as Tara says right there. We will give it to you on the test. And I'm going to throw Blake 1,000,000 points if I'm wrong. Because I'll take that bet. I'll take the bet. Oh, Blake, seriously. Blake, I'm throwing another 10,000 points. Don't worry. I like that. I want people to say no million. Another 10,000 though, Blake. But where do we go? Someone help me out. Where do I go? Where do we get this z-score? How do I get that? What's going on? Where do we get that z-score? Thank you, Blake, right there. The David M. Lane applet. So let's go over here to the David M. Lane applet. And then what we need to do is we need to go to value from an area. With value from an area, we need to enter in 0.02 because, or you can enter in 98%. Makes more logical sense. And then I need to click between and we see 2.326. So, and then the next number is 3 just because I look at these things a lot. So that is a 98% confidence interval Z-score right there. And great work, Blake, right there. Good practice. You had me at 1,000,000 points. Hey, it's good practice, Blake, and good work. I appreciate all those things, Blake. Let's give you 500,000 just, or 50,000, not 500,000. I'm not going to, we'll see later. So that's the last mega points for now. I just want to say a huge thank you for everyone practicing and questioning because I get things wrong. I got things wrong in the morning class day in 474 and someone was like, wait. So keep it up, keep questioning. If we get something wrong, it happens. Let's look at what they're questioning today. So when we do proportions, what is condition 1? When we do proportions, what is condition 1? Oh, we can look at that one too, Sarah. What is condition 1? Random. So what do we want? We want our data to be randomly selected, right? So let's look right here. Randomization. This condition is satisfied because there's nothing to indicate they were not drawn randomly. Cool. When we do proportions, what do we want for condition 2? When we do, this is always the same no matter what. When we do proportions, what do we want for condition 2? When we do proportions, what do we want for condition 2? And you might have to tell me what it means, like beyond that. When we do proportions, what do we want for condition? Less than 10%. Great job right there. 10%, and as Lindsay said right there, less than 10%. So let's see what these say. The condition is not satisfied because 2,300 men is more than 10% of all men. No. The condition is satisfied because 2,300 men is less than 10% of all men. Do you think if we take 2,300 men that is less than 10% of all the men that exist? 2,300 men. Do you think that is a sample that is less than 10% of all men, the population of men? I would think so. I would think so too. Now you have to what? Put them in the chat. Put them in the chat. I've been looking for a Nintendogs thing if you ever played Smash Bros. Because I really want the dog to pop up on the screen. So put this in the chat right here. Remind us what we do before we say the next condition. We pause. We pause. Okay. So we're doing proportions. Proportions is what kind of data? Proportions is what kind of data? Before we say condition 3, we stop and we slow down a little bit. Proportions is what kind of data? What kind of data is it? Is it categorical or quantitative? It's categorical. So since it's categorical, then what is the third condition? Since it's categorical, what is the third condition? Since it's categorical, what is the third condition? Success, failure. And what does the success failure say? We need less than 10 successes and failures or more than 10 successes and failures. We need at least or less than. So we need fewer than 10 successes and failures or more than. We need at least 10 successes and 10 failures. How many successes were there in this data? Who knows how many successes there were in this data? How many successes were there in this data? You can actually tell pretty quickly. How many successes were there in this data? I'll tell you how many failures there were. That's how many failures there were. Yep. So is there at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures? Yes. The amount of successes for the interval is actually X. So we can easily see there's at least 10 successes and at least 10 failures. So we're good right there. Barely. Oh, there's a lot of successes, a lot of failures. Hey, Meredith, good to see you here. So we're good. And now we just have to mathematically solve the 98% confidence interval using the notation we did over here. So we've got p hat plus or minus z star, and then square root p hat q hat over n. Some of my least favorite chapters are like the sampling chapters where it's all like a little bit subjective. These are my favorite chapters because it's just math. It's just like math and then interpret the math. And remind me to show you something at the end of this question why I really like it. Because we're actually doing the analytics of business analytics right now. So, and great job right there. Make sure to check earlier Having trouble, I understand how to pick the notation and how to do the problems once I have the formula, but I have trouble finding the trying to figure out which formula. Yes. So the number one thing is learning how to read the problem from the start. This wants to build a confidence interval. So Caden, great question right there. We won't have z-tables on the exam. We will give you the z-value for the interval. We won't have z-tables on the exam. We will give you the z-value. Z-tables are not so much used, so much more in statistics and business analytics. It's a very kind of old school way of doing things, and we teach the more modern methods where the software usually gives you the answer. Usually you're not going to a table to go look up the number. So we don't do that because we don't really do that in analytics anymore, at least in the practicing in the field of it. Like if you run a statistical test for a company or for research, you won't usually, I've really never seen anyone looking up the values. So we don't use z-tables. We show you output. And then we ask you, I am underlining the what? I have underlined the what? 2 letters. I have underlined the what of that interval right there. I have underlined the what. The margin of error, great job, Tara, right there. The margin of error is 0.02424. And 49% plus or minus 2.4, 2.4. The standard error is this component. So that's the standard error. This is the z-score critical value. So there's 2 components to this. There's the standard error of p hat, and there's the critical value based on the z-score, and both of those together make up the margin of error. So does that make sense? Everything right here is the margin of error. So everything in green is the margin of error. The standard error is standard error of p hat is equal to p hat times q hat over n, and that is this component right here. You can see mathematically. Yeah, so the margin of error has 2 components. It has kind of a variation component from this right here. When the sample size gets larger, the standard error gets smaller, which is basically a standard deviation of sorts. It's just a variation component. And then the critical value is based on the z-score, which is based on the percent confidence. So I did highlight it the same color. So that z-score right there is based on the 98% confidence. So where does that 2.3263 come from? It comes from us being 98% confident. And then the other component is based on the variation in the data and the sample size. So good stuff right there. My question is 98. So what I use is, yep, Jackson, good answer right there. 98% confident, 2.3263. Keep up the questions. And there we go. So understand your notation, because that's usually the tougher part. So it says 3 decimals. It was 49% plus this. So there it is right there, 0.514. And then 49% minus this, and 0.466. The interval should be symmetric around 49%, and it appears to be. Somebody is claiming 45%. Oh, what's up, Blake? You doing all right, Blake? What do you think about the claim of 45%? And this has a hard part at the end, but we're going to do it. Unfortunately, it is. Oh, yes. What do you think about the claim of 45%? What do you think about that claim? Look at the interval and talk to me about that claim. I would what that claim? So you would say, I what the claim of 45 because it's where? The hypothesize it's not in the interval, and we think the truth is somewhere between here, the true proportion of men that identify themselves as the primary grocery shopper. I reject it because 45 is not in the interval. We have strong evidence that more than 45% consider themselves the shopper. This last one is a pretty tough one. I'm going to show you to solve it. We are trying to find evidence that more than 45%. So is this a one-tailed or two-tailed test to test more than 45%? Hence, the test would look like this right here if you were drawing what it looked like. If we are testing for more than 45%, is that a one-tailed? It's a one-tailed, right? So they actually allude to how to get the answer to this, which would not be on the test, but we are testing the null hypothesis that the true proportion is equal to 45%, or 0.45 as a decimal, with the alternative being the true proportion is greater than 0.45 right here, hence why we shade to the right, and it's called a one-tailed test. The two-tailed test is known as the what test? The two-tailed test is known as the what equals test. The two-tailed test is known as the not equals test. Now, when you think about a confidence interval and a two-tailed test, if you make a 98% confidence interval, then the respective alpha level of a two-tailed test would be what? What would the respective alpha level be? The respective alpha level would be what? So what would the respective alpha level be of the two-tailed test with 98% confidence? I think you're on the right track, Caden, for where we'll go with this. But for the two-tailed test, it would be this, right? Does that make sense? Because you have the inside and the outside. But if we only do the one-tailed test, it should be what? If we only do the one-tailed test, it should be what? If you only do the one-tailed test, it should be what? If you only do the one-tailed test, it should be what? Does that make sense theoretically? So if you watch it again right here, the two-tailed is the complete outside. The one-tailed test is just the area above. Does that make sense to see it? Exactly. And the two-tailed test is just the what of the confidence interval. So look at these values right here. The two-tailed test is just the what of the confidence interval. The two-tailed test is just the what of the confidence interval. 98.02. These are just what's. The two-tailed test is just the what of the confidence interval. Like you're saying, I think you're seeing it because the two-tailed test is just the what of the confidence interval. The two-tailed test is just the what of the confidence interval. 98.02. 98, it's the complement with an E. And then the one-tailed test is what of it. The one-tailed test is just the what of that. It's half of it, right? So they are explaining that right here in the problem if you look at the answer. So it says, since it is done with a one-tailed test, we have the area and we get alpha 0.01. Does that make sense right there? 100% good stuff. I was a little worried. I'm a little worried. So this is the theory behind it right here. If you're wondering why it's saying you would have right here 2% alpha with 98% confidence interval. But if we take half of that right here, we get 0.01. And there's the visualization of the two-tailed test with 90 or 0.02 alpha from a 98% confidence interval. And then half of it right here is going to be the one-tailed test. Can we read the question that says, which of the following are true? Briefly explaining if the null hypothesis. Yeah. There's a few of those, Isabel, and we can do that. I'll put that here on the list of questions. We got enough time right here. So good question right there. A company survey. Now we got in a poll the presidents. Let's go to the main screen. Woo! Chill music. Always chill music here. That's the way we go. Okay, we got 3 questions on the board in a poll the presidents. Here we found it immediately. Starting up the next question. Thank you everyone who's practicing this. It's all about know that notation. Stat 201, chapter 16 quiz. Let's do it. What do you think it starts with? Someone just drop it in the chat right here. Show you're following along. You know what we're going to do. You love what we're going to do. All these questions always start with this. Where's Mom? We got to turn this into the song again. Gotta get Jason saying, know your notation.
Know your variable types.
I should make that know your notation for this semester. 11 watching fire right there. It's all about that notation, brother.
Notation, brother.
So you have to know your notation. It's going to be the biggest help for solving any problem. And Caden was mentioning it's hard to know which formula to use, right? Without even looking what they're asking, what do you immediately notice about approval rating? Approval rating, like Leo, who knows his notation, approval rating is a what variable? Approval rating is a proportion, right? The proportion of people who approve. So if we're going to make an interval, we are going to make an interval with the following equation. P hat, because we want to find out what right now. What is our goal from this sample to find out the what? This is the good theory where you understand it pretty in depth right here. Colin, good to see you here. Throw some 10,000 points for Colin being here. Some pixie dust from the Magic Kingdom. So if you were making an interval right here, you'd say, Mr. President, we want to figure out the what of people who approve. We want to know the what of people who approve. Mr. President, we would like, or Mrs. President, whatever. We would say, we want to figure out the what of people who approve. We want to figure out the proportion? Yeah, I mean, yes. But the what proportion? Because we have a sample. We want to figure, but Jackson's right there. What does P stand for? We want to know P. We want to estimate the true proportion of people who approve. Does that make sense? Jackson is Zach right there. Another 10,000 points, Jackson. We want to know the true proportion of people who approve, and we're going to estimate the true proportion from the sample proportion. And maybe they're concerned like 50% approve. They'd be like, I want to know that at least 50% of people approve of what I'm doing. We say, okay, let's take a look at this. So here we are. So let's identify what we have in this problem. What do you see notation-wise for this problem right here? Help me out with the notation on this. What do we got? What do we got? Great job, Lindsay. And you know what we do once we find P hat. Lindsay's probably going to say it before I can even write it. She did. I'm going to throw some 10,000 points for that. Lindsay's like, boom, Q hat. Got it right there. And so is Tara. Great job, Tara, also. Blake, you got to 11, man. Say, you got the tag team duo. There's 2 tag team duos now in the chat. Okay, so we have everything but what now? So we can't solve this yet. We have everything but what, and why are we stuck-ish on this problem now? Because we should understand where this problem's going and what it's going to give us. So how would we know the z-score? Like, what are we going to need to know that? Like, this is the deeper understanding to be like, okay, well, we have everything but the z-score right now, and how in the world would we know what the z-score is going to be for this problem? How would we know the z-score? And this goes to the theory of understanding what the z-score does. So it's going to eventually tell us something that'll lead to knowing the z-score. The confidence. Great job, Lindsay. Yes, Lindsay. Amazing work. So, yes, the confidence level of the interval determines the z-score. As we can see here with the David M. Lane applet, the more confident you are, the whatter the interval. The more confident you are, the whatter the interval. The more confident you are, the whatter the interval. The more confident you are. Tara, good review. Tara will throw you 10,000 points for that. But take wider, the larger. Look at as I go from a 60% confidence interval to 70 to 80 to 90 to 95 to 98. You're more confident the truth is in there. Tara, you know what we're doing? We're throwing Tara 50,000 points because you know what we say here? I think Blake knows the quote for this. We love all answers here, and it's all about that practice because here's the thing. Do you ever remember another student getting a question wrong? And here's what's so cool right before we finish this problem, because we're almost done with it. We hit 3 million. We're just going crazy on points today. It's a points extravaganza. I don't think we remember other students getting questions wrong. We remember ourselves getting questions wrong. But it's actually a good thing we remember getting questions wrong. Because when we get something wrong, we correct our knowledge. So we learn by getting things wrong. So if you're not willing to get things wrong, like I wish students could see the chat history of some of my top students in the class. They would see like probably 20-25% wrong answers if they looked at the chat history of students who have like very high A's in the class, because they're constantly getting something wrong and being like, nope, okay, that's the right answer. Yeah, we've increased what it is. So you'll see that students who do the best get a lot of things wrong, but by the end they're like, okay, I learned that was wrong, that was wrong. You only know if you give a wrong answer. So great job right there. Just remember that. I had a teacher one time who was a jerk. People get things wrong and he would make fun of them. I don't like that teacher. It totally helps. 90% confidence. Drop that z-score. Drop that z-score for 10,000 points. 90% confidence. I got it memorized. The last number I want you to say is a 5. 90% confidence. What's the z-score? Go find it for me. Really good practice right here. Go find that z-score. Tell me in the chat the last number should be a 5 or 49. 1.645, 1.6449 also. So it's 1.645, and there it is right there. 449 if you do it exactly, but 1.645. Let's show it in the applet right over here. We need to go to 90%, and that's how you should be finding it. Use the David M. Lane. I'll drop it here in the chat. If you are looking for your Z-score, make sure to go to the David M. Lane, click the second button, go here to the between, and put the 90%, and you will see the proper Z-score. Once again, we will give these to you on the test, so you do not have to look them up. We will tell you the Z-score for 90% confidence interval is 1.645. And at this point, the problem becomes just insert the numbers. So it really is a know your notation problem, knowing how to find those values. There we go right there. And let's find, I'm going to always calculate the what right here. Just type 2 letters in the chat, show you're following along. I am always going to calculate, not that. I am always going to calculate the what right now currently. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. There we go. There we go. The margin of error, exactly. So the margin of error is 0. I think I saw it for a second. 245. And do I have a 6 afterwards? No, it's 6, 7, yeah. There it is right there. Now we're going to do the plus or minus on this. So we go right here and go 0.45 plus this. There it is right there, 0.475. And the lower of the interval is going to be, those are zeros at the start. They're not sixes. Minus. There we go. So if you're wondering, 0.45 minus. There we go. 425. Now, one thing I want to point out is these problems right here are actually easier than they seem if you use software, because I could go here to prop test and type in the amount of my sample. It was 1100, right? 1100, and then confidence level equals 0.90, and I could get my answer right here. So I can just use software to get the answer and be like, I am 90% confident the true proportion of whatever we are trying to examine is contained in the interval 42.5 to 47.5. And that is the same answers we just got. And that's how using software makes life a lot easier. And we could even test values like a proportion equal. It's using a null of 0.5 right here. But I could put in a null hypothesis of something like 0.44. And would I reject 0.44 or not reject 0.44? So this is the last question on this, a little advanced knowledge. Would I reject 0.44 or not reject 0.44? I know you've never seen this output, but just think, if I were to test 0.44, would I reject it or not reject it? So if I were to test the probability of 0.44, the proportion, would I reject it or not reject it? This is related to the class. It's a totally different output. I would not reject, and why, Lindsay? You are correct. We would not reject it. And why would we fail to reject? You're 100% correct. And you can just look at this right here, because I could tell you we would not reject it by looking. It's within the interval. So would I reject 0.42? Would I reject 0.42 at the 10% alpha level? Would I reject 0.42 at the 10% alpha level? Because this is the confidence level. Would I reject 0.42? I'm going a little advanced right here at the end just to review concepts. Would I reject 0.42 at the 10% alpha level? Yes or no? So should my p-value when I rerun this be less than 10% right here? Would I reject 0.42 at the 10% alpha level? Let me ask you this. Is 0.42 in the interval? Yes or no, is 0.42 in the interval? So is 0.42 in that interval? Is it in that interval? Oh, wait, look, to be very careful. The exact number 0.42. The exact number 0.42. 0.42 is not in that interval. So that means we would what that value. So that means, just to follow the steps, that means we what that value. 0.42 is not... Oh, no. Lindsay, you cracked me up. Psych! Lindsay was trying to trick everybody for 10,000 points right there. 0.42 is not in the interval. That means we reject it. And since we reject it, we know we're rejecting it at the what alpha level. We know we are rejecting it at the what alpha level. So this is the last question right here. 90% confidence interval. This means it will be rejected at the what alpha level. Not 0.05. Not 0.05. 90% confidence. 90% confidence. The 0.10 alpha level. So let's run it and look right here. It can be rejected at the 0.05. Here, I'll do something a little closer. And look right here, I did 0.423, which is not in the interval. And notice how 0.423 can be rejected at the 10% alpha level. And the two-tailed, correct, because the 90% inside, 10% outside. So this is still outside the interval. And since it's outside the interval, it can be rejected at the 10% alpha level. Does this output here seem very complex now? Do you understand a lot of what's going on with the p-value? Don't worry about degrees of freedom. We are testing that the true proportion is equal to 0.423. The alternative is that it's not equal to 0.423, just like our notation in 201. Here's the 90% confidence interval for what the true proportion is. And here's p hat right here, which is the sample estimate. So that's your p hat right there, the estimate of the true proportion. It doesn't put the hat over it, but it's the estimate of the truth. Okay. So they believe 50%. It was 0.425 and 0.475. They believe 50%. You what 50%? You what 50%? Same sort of question that we were just doing. We did a little more advanced version of it. But you what 50%? Look at your interval. You what 50%? Very clearly. You reject it because the approval rating is of 50% is not in the interval. Wait. Oh my gosh, wait a minute. I added and subtracted to the wrong... I did it to Q hat. Be very careful. I just did it to Q hat right here. I used Q hat instead of P hat. Please, I used Q hat right here. Does everyone see I accidentally used Q hat? But the margin of error is still the same. I just saw that because I was like, why is it asking that rep value? So I used Q hat. I should have used P hat. But the margin of error is still the same. The margin of error is still the same. So all I had to do was use Q hat instead. This should be correct. They believe 50%. 50% is not in the interval. Got 100. Yes. So be careful. I did use Q hat by accident. That's a notation error right there. P hat was equal to 55, and P hat should be this. I accidentally used Q hat. The good news is the margin of error would have the same calculation either way. So tricky question that Brian made a small error on that almost cost him a lot. We got the before lending money. Where did you get the 50%? That's what they wanted to test. So they had a null hypothesis. They theorized, like in your project, that the true proportion is 50%. They are looking for evidence that the true proportion is not 50%. And so since 50% is outside the interval, we can reject it. Does that make sense right there? 50%, yeah. And so we could literally run the test over here if we wanted, where we would test 50%, and this is the proportion we're looking at. So now you can see right here, you would reject 50%. So if we ran it as a statistical test, the answer exists right there with reject 50%. But the answer also exists over here that 50% is contained outside the interval. And that's the way they're going, like with the project, where we can say 50% is outside the interval. But that also means we reject it with a p-value less than 0.1 alpha, because 90% confidence interval was used to create the interval. So really good theory right there. Small question, just solving the interval, but understanding the theory behind confidence intervals and how they're connected is very important. Hence why I went in a little more detail and did lecture mode right there. Let's do the before lending money, a bank must decide. We're rocking and rolling right here with these questions. Stat 201, Chapter 6 quiz. Here we are. Before lending money, a bank must decide whether they believe the applicant will repay the loan. One strategy used is to make a point system. Loan officers assess information about the applicant, totaling points they award for the person's income level, credit history, current debt burden, and so on. The higher the point total, the more convinced, that it's safe to lend money. Any applicant with a lower point total than a certain cutoff is denied a loan. We can think of the decision as a hypothesis test. Since the bank makes its profit from the interest, their null hypothesis is to do what? What is, explain to me, give loan, don't give loan. The null hypothesis is that the bank will what? You walk into a bank, they're using the null of what? Give loan, don't give loan. The null hypothesis is what? Give loan, don't give loan. The null hypothesis is give loan, don't give loan. What would the null be? Give loan. It says it right there. So give the loan, right? So let's write that down right here, and let's learn our type 1, type 2 error. It's a good way to review it right here, and be very slow on this, because a lot of people reverse it all the time. Give loan, alternative hypothesis, don't give loan. Okay. So with this, how does the saying go? In a type 1 error, in a type 2 error, how does it go? I'm going to let you practice it first, then I'll give you a reminder of it. So if you're practicing and learning this right now, see if you can remember it, see if you can keep it straight in your head, and then let's see if we can get it together. We'll have someone put it in the chat right here, and then I'll teach you the way to do it again here. In a type 1 error, the null is true and we reject it. In a type 2 error, the null is false and we fail to reject it. So if this is your first time hearing this, maybe you're watching this video in the future, this is the way we do it right here. Go ahead and hold up one finger right here for the type 1 error. In a type 1 error, the null is true. That's a T right there for true. And if the null is true, it would be an error to reject it. So we say in a type 1 error, the null is true, but we reject it because we make an error. In a type 2 error, that's a 2, the null is false. So this is an F for false, and we fail to reject it. And that's 2. Great job, Tara, right there. And so, and see you later. Have fun in class. The second F of the type 2, the null is false, and we fail to reject it. Remember both those right there. So it's very important to remember, in a type 1 error, the null is true, and we reject it. In a type 2 error, the null is false, and we fail to reject it. Let's look at how it applies to this problem. So in a type 1 error, the null is true. What is true about the world? Be very careful. What is true about this world? In a type 1 error, the null is true. So explain to me what is true. They do give the loan? In a type 1 error, they do give the loan? Be careful. The null is true. Can you do the spam filter? Yeah, we have enough time, Rashni. Yeah. So and Blake, you're on the right track with this. So put everything together right. I think Blake, you're on the right track. So what happens? Correct. Lindsay has it right there. Let's show Blake and Lindsay. Blake and Lindsay are the tag team duo right now. And Roshni right here. Good to see you too. So Roshni's the tag team trio right here. So the null is true. They should give the loan. That's a fact of the world. But they are going to do what to the null in a type 1 error? In a type 1 error, the null is true, but they're going to what it? In a type 1 error, the null is true. They should give the loan, but they're going to what that? In a type 1 error, the null is true. They should give the loan, but they're going to reject that and say, nah, we're not giving you the loan. So that's when they don't give a loan to someone who would what? That's when they don't give a loan to someone who would what? In a type 1 error, they don't give a loan to someone who would what? Pay it. Exactly. So we know what the type 1 error is, and then type 2 error is going to be kind of the reverse of that. In a type 2 error, the null is false, and we fail to reject it. So tell me about this person. The null is false. What is going to happen? Just tell me about this person in reality. The null is false for this person. Tell me in reality about this person. Just tell me the reality about this person. The null is false for them. Tell me the reality about this person. The null is false for them. In a type 2 error, the null is false. So explain to me what that means when I say the null is false for this person. What does that mean? Tell me in reality about this person. What's the deal? What's the deal with this person? In a type 2 error, the null is false. So what does that mean? Well, but this is the reality, Lindsay. This is the reality. Because in a type 2 error, the null is false. So it is false that we should give them the loan. So what's the reality? This person will what? So what's the reality of the world? Like what's the truth? The truth is what? If the null is false, then what's the truth? What is the truth? The truth is that we should what? If it's false that we should give them a loan, the truth would be what? The truth would be that what? This is the real practice of it to understand completely. It is true that they're not going to pay off the loan. Does that make sense? That is true that they're not going to pay off the loan. But in a type 2 error, we are going to what? So say your thing in a type 2 error, the null is false, but we're going to what? We're going to fail to reject it, right? So it's false that we should give them a loan, but we're going to what anyways? It's false that we should give them a loan. That's false. We should not give them a loan. That's false. That's the truth of the world. The null is false. We should not give them a loan. But we are going to fail to reject it. So what's going to happen here? In a type 2 error, the null is false. We should not give them a loan. But we're going to fail to reject it, meaning we what? It is false that we should give them a loan, but we're going to fail to reject the null, meaning we what? What does that mean to say you fail to reject the null in this instance? This is the really deep understanding when you explain it. Well, it's a type 2, but what does that mean? It is false that we should give them a loan, but we're going to fail to reject the null that we should give them a loan. So we're going to do what? We're going to fail to reject the null. So what does that mean? What are we going to do? What's going to happen? We give them a loan. So does that make sense? We shouldn't give them a loan. It is false that we should give them a loan. The null is false. We should not give them a loan. It is true that we should not give them a loan. The null is false. We shouldn't give them a loan. It is true that we don't give them a loan. This is the truth. But we're going to make a what? Say the 5-letter word that starts with an E. We are going to make a what and give them the loan when we shouldn't. We are going to make a what here, 5-letter word starts with an E, and give them the loan when we shouldn't. Because it's Gary Go Jackson right there. Does that make sense? What's called a type 2 error? Because it is false that we should give them a loan, but we're going to fail to reject the null. It's not a 5-letter word, Blake. So that is a type 2 error right there. Type 2 error. When a person defaults on a loan, when the bank, so that's when we give them a loan when we shouldn't. They defaulted. What kind of error is it when the bank misses an opportunity? That's the type 1. Suppose the bank wants to lower the cutoff right here. So now they need more evidence. Could I have 1 point? 1 point. We'll give you 10,000. 1 point makes the totals weird. So now the bank is asking for more evidence to not give loans. What would that considerably be? Because they're looking for evidence to not give loans. Would that be lower or higher alpha? So they're going to lower the cutoff for evidence to not give loans. So they're saying they need more evidence. Is that a lower or higher alpha level? More evidence they need. So if they're asking for more evidence, that is equivalent to asking for a what or alpha level. To say we need more evidence to not give loans. More evidence. I think we did a question like this. Lower alpha. Alpha is the amount of evidence. Great job, Sarah, right there. It's a lower alpha level. Alpha is the amount of evidence you require to reject the null. And if you were to lower alpha, think about this. You would give more people loans. More people would get loans because you need more evidence to not give loans. What impact does changing the cutoff value have on this right here? I think I've got the notes still up from yesterday, so let me see. Because the notes from yesterday are going to be a huge help. Oh, man. Oh, maybe I have it over here on the slides. 2 seconds. Yes, we have it right here. Here we go. Great notes from yesterday. Let's go take a look at it. Good to see you, Roshni. And you're here earlier, too. Okay, so the 3 things that impact the power of a test are what? The 3 things that impact the power of a test are what? List for me the 3 things that impact the power of a test. These are good notes. If you're practicing, we want to write down the 3 things that impact the power of a test are what? The 3 things that directly impact the power of a test are what? Effect size is one of them, which is the difference between the null and the truth. So the greater the difference, like if I play my brother in basketball or I play LeBron James, it's easier to see that LeBron James is better. You'll see it more quickly because he'll just destroy me. My brother will also win too. Beta, beta does impact power because it's the complement, but we don't really impact beta. We would impact the alpha right here, which is your type 1 error rate, and your sample size, which is the amount of data you take. Larger sample size means more power. Larger alpha level means more power. Power is the ability to correctly reject the false null. I would write that down also if you're watching this. Power is the ability to correctly reject the false null. Sometimes that's literally on the test. And so what we would say right here is all of these things right here are whatly correlated to beta. Sample size, alpha, and this right here are whatly correlated to beta. Sample size, alpha level, which is type 1 error rate, effect size are whatly correlated to beta, which is your type 2 error rate. All of these they're directly but whatly correlated. Look at the colors and the arrows, not positively. So to beta, they are whatly correlated. To beta, they are whatly correlated. Blake, 10,000 points following along, practicing right here. To beta, these are all inversely or negatively correlated. Higher sample size, lower beta. Higher alpha, lower beta. Higher effect size, lower beta. But what is the complement of beta? The complement of beta is what? 1 minus beta, which is the complement of beta. Great job, Lindsay, right there. You're welcome. The complement of beta is what? The complement of beta is known as what? What is the complement of beta known as? 1 minus beta is known as what? Great job, Blake, right there. Symbols. It's known as power. So if you lower beta, you what power? If you lower beta, you what power? If you lower beta, you what power? If you lower beta, you raise power. So since all of these, increasing all of these lower beta, increasing any of these would increase power. Does that make sense? I don't think the question goes that in depth, but this is a lot of last lecture. So really good stuff here on the 3 things that impact beta, which 1 minus beta is power. So if they impact beta, they'll impact power. So make sure you understand that sample size is the amount of data you collect. Alpha is your decided on type 1 error rate decided by the researcher, and effect size is the difference between the null and the truth. As in, my brother and I might have this difference in our basketball abilities, which is harder to detect. You might say, Brian and Darren look about the same, which would be a type 2 error where you fail to reject the false null that Darren's actually better than me. But would it be easier to reject the false null that LeBron is better than Brian? Because LeBron is like this much better than me as far as I can go. So there's a bigger effect in the difference between the null that LeBron and I are the same and the truth that he's way better than me. So it'd be easier to reject the false null, and i.e. we have a bigger effect size, which means less probability you make a type 2 error where you believe LeBron and I are the same, i.e. your test is more powerful. Effect size is kind of the complex one, and we don't impact effect size directly because it's just the truth. You would school LeBron, and we all know it. Maybe one of these days, I have dreams of what we could possibly do. I doubt LeBron. If one day, like, I would say, like, if I could play LeBron in basketball, I'll be like, every semester I talk about playing LeBron James in basketball. And then, like, it cuts and, like, LeBron James is next to me. And I'm like, today we're making it happen. He just, like, dunks on me. And then I'm like, yep, the effect size was large. if he was in Knoxville and just did that, like a 15-second video and we just posted it to the channel, that'd be amazing. So LeBron, shout outs right there. You can dunk on me any day, man. I'll just, man. Be like, LeBron James dunked on me. Let's get LeBron James here. Any basketball player, you name it. MJ, you want to come down and dunk on me? Man, anyone. I'm bad at basketball. What impact does changing the cutoff have? Will we be decreasing the type 1 error rate because that's lower alpha? Type 1 error rate is literally alpha. And if you decrease type 1, you increase type 2. That should be correct. I'm like triple checking. We did get it correct. Sample size, the amount of data collected, alpha decrease. The alpha level is decided by the researcher, and the alpha level is literally your type 1 error rate. If you lower alpha, you are literally decreasing type 1. Does that make sense, Blake, right here? That's how I know the answer to that so easily, that if you lower alpha, you are literally doing what? If you lower alpha, you are literally doing what right here? If you lower alpha, you are literally doing what? So if you lower alpha, you are also literally doing what? They affect power. All 3 of these things right here affect power. So they all go into impacting power over here. Yeah, you would. Braden right there. Great answer, Braden. If you lower your alpha, you are lowering power by lowering your what? You would lower power. That is correct. If you lower it, you would lower power. You are lowering your power by lowering your alpha, which is your what? You are lowering your alpha, which is your what, which would lower your power. Your alpha level is your what? Which is how I know the answer to this question, because your alpha level literally is your what? By lowering alpha, you are decreasing your what? So it's right over here in the notes. By lowering alpha, you're literally lowering your what? So you need to know this, that alpha is your what? Like whatever you decide alpha to be is your rate of this, your type 1 error. Type 2 error is not 1 minus alpha. That's a common misconception. I think we have put it on the test as a trick question. Beta is type 2 error rate, and beta is a complex equation from all these. Not complex, but you have to find it from all these to know what the type 2 error rate is. So beta is not 1 minus alpha. Beta is not 1 minus alpha. Beta is your type 2 error rate, and it's not 1 minus alpha. If you decrease type 1, you increase type 2, because type 1 and type 2 are whatly correlated. Type 1 and type 2, yeah, let's do that one here to end, Sarah, I think. Type 1 error and type 2 are whatly correlated. Type 1 and type 2 are whatly correlated. Type 1 and type 2 error are whatly correlated. Great note to have also right here. Type 1 and type 2 are whatly correlated. So type 1 and type 2 are whatly correlated. Negatively correlated. So that's how we know the answer to this also, by saying if you decrease type 1, you increase type 2. They are inversely or negatively correlated. Good stuff right there. I want to make sure people not just see the answers, but know how we're getting them. Because I know when I solve these, you can just see the answers, but I want you to know 99 hours. Nice job right there. Who has it? Blake, great job. Shouts to Blake right there. A statistics professor. Oh, we have spam filter. That's very similar to the type 1, type 2. A statistics professor. Okay. Let me take the note on this. This might be one of the last ones we're doing here today. A stance professor. We did the which of the following are true in another video. Someone asked about that one. Okay. Hello, people in the future. You probably clicked right here. So let's do this question. Here we go. Okay. So when we do the null always has the what sign. First things we should know about this. What does the null have right here? The null always has the equal sign. Boom. One part of the problem done. A statistics professor has observed that for several years, the average score on an exam was 75 out of 100. A salesman suggests that he try a statistical software package that gets more students involved with computers. It's like my Pearson's being very meta right here. Predicting that it will increase the scores. Dun, dun, dun. We now know the what. Increase the scores. We now know the what of the alternative. The salesman is trying to say there is what. We know it's a one-tailed, yep, and we know it's going to be a what alternative. The sign of the alternative is greater than. Are we trying to understand the proportion or quantitative mean? Is this a categorical or quantitative question? Is this a categorical or quantitative question? So is this categorical or quantitative? Because we're looking at the scores of students on a test. Quant. So what should we be testing right here? I'm not even going to click the buttons. I'm not going to click the buttons. So it's quantitative because it's the score of a test. Mu, because then we're going to go right here and put mu for true mean. So that's good practice to know what it is. And then what, if nothing's changed, what should be the truth? If nothing's changed, what should be the truth? If everything's still the same from this semester to last, what should be the truth? What should be the truth if nothing's changed? Oh, great job right there with the mu in chat. Like, what should be the truth if nothing's changed? If nothing's changed, what should be the truth? 75. And 75, a lot of people forget this notation. 10,000 points for this notation. 75 is what in notation? A lot of people forget this one. 75 is what we are testing, what we are hypothesizing is true if nothing has changed. What is 75 in notation? It is what we not X, not P naught. P naught means the null proportion. Good guess there, Meredith. You're on the right track with P naught, though. And Blake is kind of saying X bar. Blake has our brain right there. It is mu naught. So what does mu naught mean? Mu naught is the what true mean. So mu naught stands for what? Put it into words to remember. Be like, okay, that is this value. And not the sample. That'll be X bar. X bar or Y bar is the sample mean. Good answers there, Blake. The naught means it's put in eights before it. Naught means it's the what value. If we say P naught or mu naught, and if you add an H before that, it'll be good. Not in proportion true, we wouldn't put proportion and true together, or proportion and mean, because those are cat and quant words together. So the naught, here, I'll write this down. You ready? Here's a hint. P naught is the hypothesized true proportion. So mu naught is the what? P naught is the hypothesized true proportion. So mu naught is the what? P naught is the hypothesized true proportion. Yeah, well, let's do it, Roshni. Yes, I want to roll. So let's get the. We'll do it quick though. Good question. The hypothesized true mean. Does that make sense, Meredith? So mu naught is the hypothesized true mean, which is true according to the null, because the null says that the true mean is equal to what we hypothesize it to be. Where in this instance, and we're just plugging in right here the value of 75 when you see it right there to do it in context of the problem. So that is what we hypothesize is true according to the null. And you could literally just take 75 and plug it into this format and write it out right there. So practicing and knowing the notation will help to solve the problem, because if we were to work this by hand, we would have to solve the equation y bar, the sample mean, is equal to the y bar minus the hypothesized mean over s over square root of n equals a t with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. Then find the p-value from that for the one sample t-test. I don't think the question goes that direction, but that is how we would have to solve a question like that. So this is a one-tailed test because it's the greater than. So the one-tailed test because the professor can try the one-tailed because the software is supposed to increase exam scores. Now we get into a type 1, type 2 error. In a type 1 error, the null is what? In a type 1 error, the null is what? In a type 1 error, the null is what? In a type 1 error, the null is what? In a type 1 error, the null is what? True. So what does that mean about exam scores using the software? What does that mean about exam scores using the software? This is the truth. So he used the software, and this is the truth right here. So what does that mean? What does that mean? The null is true, so that's a true statement. So the null is true, so what does that mean? People have like a 50-50 shot on these, and I see like 50% of people get it right, and I'm like, no! Well, so it's true that exam scores are still at a 75. But what are we going to do to the null? It is true that exam scores are still at a 75. It's true that the true mean is still a 75. But we're going to do what to the null? We're going to do what to the null here? Oh, no worries, no worries. We're going to do what to the null? In a type 1 error, the null is true and we reject it. So what does that mean we're going to believe? So if we reject the null, what do we believe in a type 1 error? What would we believe about this software? In a type 1 error, the null is true. Exam scores are still at a 75. But we are going to reject the null. We believe they're getting more than a 75. So what decision are we going to make about the software? Are we going to buy or not buy the software? The null is true that they're still making around a 75. They're still making a 75. We're going to reject the null, so are we going to buy or not buy the software? We're going to buy it. We think there's evidence to buy it, a false positive. We're going to buy it. We will buy it. Because we're like, I reject the null that they're at a 75. I have evidence that their exam scores are greater than. We would buy it and see, and look, it's 50-50. Ah! This is where it takes the practice. You have to look at the null and say, the null is true. The exam scores haven't changed. So what should you do? If the null is true, what should you do? If the null is true, what should you do? If the null is true and exam scores using the software haven't changed, what should you do? What should you do? If you try software with your students and exam scores don't change, what should you do? It is true that exam scores haven't changed. What should you do? What would be the good decision to make for students right there? Well, we would fail to reject. So what would we do if we fail to reject it? We should not buy the software. That's what we should not buy it, but we are going to mistakenly reject the null and buy the software when the null is true. We're going to make an error. So this is the error right here. Good practice. These are tough. Like it flips around really easy. So in context, what would be a type 1 error? The professor thinks that the students score an average of no. The professor buys the software when it doesn't help the students. Bingo. The type 2 error is going to be when we don't buy the software. The professor doesn't buy the software when it does help the students. Well, some of these, the professor thinks that the score on average is 75 on the semester exam when they really score an average. Yeah, but in context, I think this is what's getting at. What is meant by the power of the test? The power of the test is the ability to correctly reject the false null. So if you see the words correctly right here, that's on the right track. It'd be correctly deciding the software is what for students. if we reject the false null, the power of the test would be figuring out the null is false, and it'd be figuring out that the software is helpful or not helpful. A powerful test would be figuring out that it's what for students. Be careful. So if the null is false and we correctly reject it, we'd be able to figure out that the alternative is what we should do, right? So the power of the test is the ability to find evidence that the software is what? The power of the test is the ability to find evidence, think of an H word at the end, that the software is what to students. The power of the test is the ability to find evidence it's helpful. It's the ability to reject the false null, like to correctly reject the false null. So if we have a powerful test, it'll be able to figure out correctly that the software is helpful. Like we'll be able to reject the false null. Because if the null is false, we should reject it, right? So a powerful test will be able to figure out that we should reject the null. So, and we would go right here. The powerful test is correctly deciding that the software is helpful. So would you want your teacher to have a powerful test to correctly decide the software is helpful? We like powerful tests. The last question right here, Roshni had one. We got to do it really quick. Might have to speed run it. Spam email. So we're probably going to speed run this question, Roshni, because I got class here in just like 8 minutes. Oh, it's type 1, 2 error rate. Here we go. Spam email speed run. So let's check this out. Spam filters. Okay. First thing we would want to figure out type 1, type 2 error is our what and what hypotheses. So let's figure out our what and what hypotheses to start out. We need to know that like this. So what do we need to know type 1, type 2 error? The null and alternative. We got to know that to know the context of all this. So spam emails, try to figure out if one thing, the filter is an upcoming email, keywords, where's the null? The null is that the message is real. So they need evidence it's spam. So in a type 1 error, when the filter allows spam to slip through into your inbox, what kind of error is made? So that would be the null is false. Oh, because the null is that it's a real message. So what error is this? Because if it's bad email, the null is false. It's a type 2. Yep. So this is a type 2 error because the null is false and the filter failed to reject it. It's a good way of phrasing it. And then this is going to be the type 1 email right here, or type 1 because the null was true. The null is that the email is a real email and it should go. So this is a type 1 error rate because the null is true and the filter rejected it. This is really good. The wording on this really helps clarify what's going on. Some filters allow their user to adjust a cutoff. Suppose your filter has a cutoff of 50 points, but you reset it to 60. Is this analogous to choosing a higher or lower alpha? So you're letting more things get through. So would that be increasing or decreasing your alpha? You're letting more things get through. You're saying I need less evidence. Let me think right here. Ooh, so no, it might be a little different. I got to watch out on this. A higher point total provides more evidence. Okay, so you're saying you need more evidence. Be careful. This is reverse. This is tricky. If you need more evidence, this is a what or alpha. Be very careful. They're saying we need more evidence. This will be a what or alpha. Be very careful. They're saying they need more evidence. This would be a lower alpha because alpha is the amount of evidence you require. So it says a higher point total means more evidence. So they literally say right here, a higher point total provides more evidence. Alpha is the amount of evidence you require. We're saying we need more evidence. So this would be a lower alpha because it takes more evidence. So it's related that way. Great job, Meredith, right there. That's a tricky one. What impact does this change in the cutoff have on the type 1 error rate? So if you lower alpha, what happens to type 1? If you lower alpha, which we just said we'd be doing there, what happens to type 1? If you lower alpha, what happens to type 1? If you lower alpha, what happens to type 1 error rate? If you lower your alpha, what happens to type 1 error rate? Because alpha literally is that. And then what happens to type 2? Be careful because I've got the color coding here. Alpha and beta are going to be inverse. So if you lower alpha, you what type 2? If you lower alpha, you what type 2? Higher type 2. So the risk of type 1 would be decreased and the risk of type 2 would be increased. 100%. We love it right there. Really good question. Pretty tricky on that requiring more evidence. Requiring more evidence means lower alpha. Alpha is the amount of evidence we require to reject the null. So if you're saying I want more evidence, great job, Roshni, right there. Thank you so much. Really good question. Speed run at the end right here. Make sure to review the slides. I like to diagram it this way, talking about your 3 things that impact power. With that, class in 4 minutes. Bye, everybody.